Welcome back to the Lords of Lore podcast. I'm Matt.
I'm Luca.
And I'm Matt.
Other Matt, you're here again.
I am.
Always glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
How's everyone doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Yeah, pretty
Nice.
I'm
Glad to hear
tired.
it. As always.
Yeah.
That's just getting old, is just being more tired more often.
Yeah.
For the listeners and audience, it won't be, but for us, it's been a while. So glad to be back. Let's get straight into it. I'm going to kick us off here this week, change the format up a little bit.
All right.
So Matt, you know a little bit about what I'm talking about. So I'm going to pose this question to Luca first. Luca, what would you say I'm the biggest fan of in my life as far as fantasy sci-fi goes? What do you think is my most dominant obsession or fictional world, let's say?
I would say Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is I've baited you here because that's what I thought you would say. And I think most people who know me would say the same. But I've seen Star Wars movies multiple times. So I've done some rough calculations here. But would you be surprised to know I've spent more time in my life in another fantasy setting than Star Wars?
I would be, and I don't know what it would be. Dungeons and Dragons? Like, I can't.
Oh, it's very close. You're very close. Not actually.
Oh my God, it's got to be a Critical Role, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Nice, you nailed it. Yes. So I've actually spent 45 days of my life in listening to Critical Role. That's insane. Straight.
Holy cow.
Damn.
Yeah. So I finished campaign 2 because as some of you may know, I'm a miniature painter and I paint for commission. So when I'm painting, I like to sit down for, hours at a time. And one of the best things for me to have on during that time is Critical Role because I love D&D. I love improv. I love role playing. I love fantasy worlds. So D&D and Critical Role especially gets all of those things. And it's a story that I've invested so much time in. So I'm always eager to see what happens next. So I did the math after finishing campaign 2. And so I finished both campaign 1, campaign 2, had to catch up a little bit with campaign 2. Now I'm on to campaign 3, about 4 episodes in. So I got a little bit of catch up to do there as well. And, just the first campaign was 434 hours. Sorry, 100. I can't gameplay time. Sorry. First campaign was 373. Second was 483. So just putting the math together, that's, 1,000 hours ish plus one shots, plus, Exandria Unlimited, plus, the third campaign that I've started watching. So it's a lot of time, and me crunching these numbers, being 45 days straight of me sat there looking. And again, to be fair, I'm not watching it the entire time. I'm more so listening to it. But I'm engaged with it. When things happen, I'm aware. And so it was sort of jarring to me that, like, wow, I've really spent that much time in this fantasy universe. With Star Wars, I spent a lot of time watching all, 11, 12, if you're nasty, movies is around 25-ish hours.
Is that 12 if you're nasty counting the holiday special? Is that what the nasty part is?
No, that's the Clone Wars animated movie.
Okay.
I think, right, because it'd be 11 with Rogue One and Solo. So then with the Clone Wars animated, it's 12.
I didn't even think about that movie the first time. So
there's 54 hours of the Clone Wars series, which I've seen maybe multiple times, like maybe at least like 1.5 times through. And then I've watched all the other, like Mandalorian, Boba Fett, all that stuff. So Star Wars is definitely up there, hundreds of hours, and I've seen that stuff multiple times. So maybe, a couple hundred or few hundred hours I've spent in Star Wars, plus all the books I've read. So
the games,
just my life being a Star Wars fan, painting Star Wars models, all the stuff like that. Obviously, there's a lot having this podcast and talking about it ad nauseum. So obviously, like, Star Wars rivals it, but Critical Role shits on everything in terms of time spent, consuming. And here's just one thing real quick. I remember when I was in middle school, I had a buddy who started dating this girl. and they dated for like a month, and it was middle school, so they weren't like, an actual relationship. But he was like, oh, I just feel like I've invested so much time. I don't know if we should break up. We've been dating for a month. And I was like, buddy, you have 45 days played in World of Warcraft. You had a tougher time quitting that. Like, this should be a no-brainer for you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, anyway, so I now have as much time watching Critical Role as my buddy did playing World of Warcraft. And I'm like, damn, I am now that guy. So yeah, I want to turn this revelation into a conversation. And I want to know what you guys' favorite universes are, first of all. And then also if they're the same or different than the ones you spent the most time in. So we'll start with you here, Matt. What's your favorite?
Man, that is a super tough question. I think the easiest two for me to point out in terms of time spent with is, Star Wars is up there because I've seen all this stuff like you have. Yeah. Might not have watched the movies as many times, but there's that. The Mass Effect universe I've spent a lot of time in, just replaying specifically like that second game and usually getting a solid like 20 to 30 hours out of it. Dragon Age, another series I've put a lot of hours into.
Yeah.
The Witcher, tons of hours in those games. So, but picking like an overall favorite, I don't know. That's hard. I haven't done the Critical Role stuff like you have, so I can't just immediately go to 45 full days of content.
Plus that, I guess there's another few hours of the show that I watched.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
Small matter of a massive Amazon hit TV show. Oh man, I think my favorite might just be Star Wars because it's got like the fantasy elements from both medieval fantasy and sci-fi combined into like one singular show or universe concept, and it just has the possibility for everything. Like I like to ask my friends sometimes like, which universe would you rather live in? And Star Wars usually wins out just because there's so many opportunities to do something different and unique in the world, no matter like where you start out because of how space travel can work.
Like I would much rather live in the Star Wars universe than like most fantasy worlds, which are like medieval brutalist, like tough to survive.
I think Star Wars will be my answer for favorite, and then like a Mass Effect would be total hours, maybe. Yeah,
it's funny too because I'm like, have I watched more Critical Role than I've played Skyrim? And I think the answer is probably yes at this point.
I played Skyrim on like 4 different consoles at this point. So
Will definitely not, but me, I don't know. Let's move to you here, Luca. What's your favorite, and then what's the one you've probably spent the most time in? And are they both the Goblin King or Emperor?
Honestly, in terms of books, I've reread that book the most times of any book. But like most times spent, honestly, just in terms of hours, probably Skyrim. I'm like probably close to like 1,000 hours in Skyrim at this point. Like I'm not even joking.
Oh my god!
No! Wait a minute.
It's been 11 years. Like I've been playing this game.
Yeah, that's fair.
I have to change my answer then. I have to change my answer to Counter-Strike because I had 1,400 hours in Counter-Strike.
Whoa!
Yeah,
but like. Okay, so that's the most, but that's funny because Counter-Strike is just like Earth with guns.
Pretty much.
It's just a war simulator.
It's the weirdest game of diffuse that you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah. Oh man, that's hilarious. Like I definitely had a lot of, I think by the end of it, in that era, I had like 22 days played of Modern Warfare 2, which when
Still
I think about it now, I'm like, man, like indoctrination is real. But I don't know. Counter-Strike is a weird one because it's a game, obviously. So it's not like you're just taking in story. It's a hobby in itself.
You don't know about the Counter-Strike deep lore? Like,
deep lore. Which is funny because like then there are games like say like Overwatch or like what's that other one? That's a newer one. That's like a similar type of, not Fortnite, but it's like Valorant. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
There's games like that like have the lore.
They do have lore.
And they're first person shooter.
No,
Even Halo.
League of Legends now. Oh
no.
Oh.
Yeah. So like, I guess my question is like for those ones. Oh wait, Luca, what was your answer? Was Skyrim? Sorry.
Yes.
And then what would you say is your favorite?
I don't know that I have like just a favorite universe. Like I spent so much time in like Lord of the Rings too, like Middle Earth. Honestly, right now it's got to be like the creations of Anthony Ryan. I've just been like tearing through his work.
I win the podcast. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Okay, so now that leads to my next question though. Like something like Skyrim, or even something like League of Legends, or even in your case, Matt, like Counter-Strike. Like there's the appeal of the actual gameplay, right? Yeah. Like for Skyrim, it's like you love Skyrim as a place, but you know, you probably wouldn't hang out there if you weren't in control of like a person, right? I don't know if the Skyrim TV show would have been successful if not for the game, like in a hypothetical world.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is like, what is it about these worlds that you spent more time in, you know, beyond just the gameplay? Is there aspects of those worlds, like say something like Mass Effect, like you were saying, Matt, like because there's sort of like a limitless, or not limitless, but like so much to do and difference that you can change to the actual story. Like, is that the element that brings you back? Is it the world itself, or is it the gameplay?
I think it's for Mass Effect, it's at this point, like I've played the game so many times that like there's not that many different endings that I can realistically try and play through at this point. I mean, I think it's mostly the characters. Just so many really lovable characters that you just want to go back and play again and again to see. Like Garrus has to go down as one of the greatest companion characters in all of gaming history. Like that scene in Mass Effect 3 where you're just hanging out on the Presidium in the Citadel and you're just shooting like bottles of whiskey or alcohol or whatever in a very illegal place, and you're both like, look, man, if anybody rolled up to try and stop us, we'll be like, hey, I'm Commander Shepard, I'm Garrus. No one is going to tell us to stop doing this at that scenario.
Right.
And it's just like a great moment. And just the way that the interactions with the characters can change the gameplay itself. It's not so much like the choices and the outcomes, it's the way that the characters can react and change things with you. Like if you're trying to prioritize a relationship with one character, you end up taking a different story path sometimes because their personal mission has different outcomes based on how you want them to perceive you. Stuff like music plays a big role as well, especially in things like games and movies. I think that's the one thing that books kind of fall behind in for picking something like a favorite world, where it's all well and good to be able to like explore within your own imagination, but music is one of those things that's really hard to try and imagine in those scenarios. Whereas like if a video game or a movie really like bangs out a fire soundtrack to go along with what you're doing in game, it just elevates it entirely. And like Mass Effect has a great soundtrack and it helps a lot with that as well. Yeah, so I think it's characters and music in that sitting. Yeah.
But what about you, Luca? Is it like with Skyrim, is it just because, and you've told us before, like you're one of those people who plays the same build every time you play.
Yep.
So
hey, that's me too.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is interesting then. So for you guys, is it like, are you doing the same things you do the first playthrough? Like, are you doing the main quest first and then, you know, or are you one of those gamers that sort of, you know, you start the game doing the main quest and then you tangent off and you forget about it? Like, is your playthroughs similar each time, or do you change your playthrough and just keep the same build?
I mean, at this point, I've played this campaign so many times. Honestly, like, haven't even. I'm in like 30 hours into like a character right now. I mean, a new same character, and like I still haven't even like gone to see the Greybeards. You know, like
yeah.
Like at this point, for me, Skyrim is just like, not only is it nostalgic, but it's one of those games. Like it doesn't feel immersive in the same way that something like I don't know if you guys have played like Red Dead feels immersive, where it's like realistic, or like Mass Effect, where you have all these like very complex characters and you feel like you're a part of the world. Whereas in Skyrim, I feel like your player character is so different from all the NPCs that it doesn't even feel like there's other people in it. You know, it's like it feels really lonely to me. Like like you're the only sort of intelligent person in the world, sort of populated with like I don't want to say like lesser creatures, but like it just feels like they don't feel very human, especially when they all have like the same 4 voices.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
like for me, Skyrim is like the aesthetic, like you're just walking around the open world at night, like the music, just looking at the landscape, like climb the mountain, is like look over to the north, look over on the east, and just I just love being in the world. Like it's the aesthetic at this point. It's
swords
so
in Scandinavia.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, it's just the aesthetic of it that just keeps drawing me. And obviously the soundtrack, like Matt, you were 100% right. Like you can't recreate like that. The emotional resonance of music, you can't get in a book. And it's just, and it's worth replaying Skyrim, just like get to a moment where you can like be out in the middle of the night and the music just starts playing on its own. Like I don't even know which theme it is, like the main like Dragonborn theme or like
it's called Far Horizon because I use it all the time for my D&D.
Yeah, same. Man, a couple of years ago, people were posting their Spotify raps or whatever, or their Apple Music most played, and I was like, I don't even know if I want to share mine because I was running so much D&D. It was all I can't remember the composer's name, but it was all 19 hours of this guy was my most played. I was like, man, what the fuck? But yeah. That's an interesting point. Like we did an episode about music. I'm not sure if that specific thing came up where like it's one of the experiences you don't get out of reading a novel, which makes it more interesting when it's like with Lord of the Rings, like without the music is just weird to me to think about because it's such a character. The music with Critical Role is like they borrow a lot of, I think they have some sort of working agreement with Bethesda where they're using some of the Skyrim soundtrack, but then there's like themes that are specific to Critical Role and then like sort of action music that's like programmable, so you can program when you want it to like swell or like get dark and stuff. It's really cool, but it's all done live, I guess, so it's a little bit different. So I don't know if that's one of like the draws for me in that, but yeah, I think I don't go to Skyrim, like I don't play Skyrim to experience the music, but when I get there and I'm playing Skyrim, it feels like a nostalgic hug. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I do remember this place based off the sound.
I mean, I've replayed The Witcher 3 just to like get into a fight scene and have that like Steel for Men or like Silver for Monsters start playing. Like that's
again, just banger D&D battle music. It's so good. It's so good.
See, if that song comes on, Luca, I think of playing D&D with you before I think of playing The Witcher, because I haven't played The Witcher that much. I
use that soundtrack all the time. I stole missions out of The Witcher 3.
Oh, man.
I just thought it was interesting to talk about, favorites versus most times. But Critical Role is one of my favorite things, but it's not my favorite thing.
I actually started watching the animated show on Amazon.
And what do you think?
I really liked it. I think I finished the first 4 episodes.
Nice.
I'm into it. Obviously, it's fantasy. It's D&D. It's.
I'm still winning the podcast.
Hey, there's a really really cool review show called Lords of Lore. I think all inside the release of that show.
Yeah, check it out. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, no, the Critical Role is definitely up there for me. And because it's expanding so much, like, we talk about D&D, they have Critical Role D&D books that are legitimate and you can put them in your games. You can play a game in the Critical Role universe. I am a person that struggles with stuff like that. Like Matt, friend of the show, Cam and Mal, or I think more specifically, Mal has asked me like, yo, like you love Star Wars so much. Do you want to play a Star Wars RPG game? And I'm very firmly like, man, I would not be good at that. I am the canon and like lore is too ingrained in my head that I'm like, if you deviated from anything, like I couldn't help myself from being, actually.
You're just pulling up like deep references from books that came out like 20 years ago. And you're
exactly.
Like, oh, this.
Well, actually, Utapau is in the Outer Rim type of stuff, I don't know if I could like separate myself from stuff like that. But anyways, Critical Role has like comic books. It has the animated show. It's got, 1,000 hours of the played game, all this stuff. So it's I think in time, as it grows and expands, like it's definitely one of those things for me now. I've watched all of it. That like it is one of those things I feel like defines my love of fantasy. but I don't know if it's my favorite. So it's weird that it's the one I've seen the most. But yeah, I'll throw it over to you now, Luca. What do you got for us this week?
I have a topic that is a fantasy trope that has been coming up in stories I've been reading. And it's very used. It is the trope of the old magic coming back into the story.
Yes.
But before I get into this, like I said, I'm reading Anthony Ryan's work. I don't know, Matt, if you've read the Draconia.
I have not.
Story. So I just started book 1.
Okay, cool.
Because I finally got my new credit. I was out of credits for like
oh no.
So I started The Waking Fire.
Nice.
And this relates to what you were just talking about, because the magic system of this world is becoming a D&D expansion.
Whoa.
I don't know if you've seen that on Instagram or anything, if you follow Anthony Ryan, but I saw it and I was like, holy crap, like this is a new D&D expansion. I started reading it, and like the magic system in the book is like people hunt drakes, and then they like distill their blood into potions that you can drink. And then if you're like blood blessed, you can drink the potions and gain some kind of power from them. There's like green potions for like enhanced physical abilities, blue for mind, red for fire, and black for like telekinesis.
Wow.
So like this is being added into like a D&D expansion. I don't know if it's like a part of the 5e canon or if it's its own little like expansion. I haven't really looked into it yet because this hasn't come out yet, but I haven't finished the story. But this is also another book where that idea of the old magic seems to be like coming back, where the story follows like a classic like corporate America type conglomerate that farms drakes and sells blood.
Okay.
And they call it like product, like they're a whole hierarchy of bureaucracy. Like it's a really interesting sort of fantasy setting, and there's like technology being produced through the use of like the product. So they have like guns and like boats that use like the red product to power engines, but then there's been some whispers of like this old sort of ancient society that also lived with these drakes and seemed to be super advanced, and it existed on this continent where you find the dragons, and like you can't take the drakes off of that island or they die, and it's like this island is this completely unexplored jungle of horrors apparently, and like now the characters are going into the interior of it, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen. But I wanted to see if you guys have any like examples of books that you've read where it's like this idea of like the magic that used to be happening or that used to exist are slowly coming back into the world, or like reawakening, or like the reawakening ancient gods. I mean, like Matt, in the Raven Shadow series, like this idea, like the wolf and the tiger are these like ancient.
Oh, you got that far, did you?
Oh yeah,
cool.
I finished it all.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, absolutely. I can understand the tropism of this for sure. I fucking don't care. I love it so much.
Mm-hmm.
I love the old magic coming up, or some group has found it and they're exploiting it, and or people forgot about it over time because it was so awful or whatever the case. And I love it when we talk about like druids being like old magic. Sort of like even in Game of Thrones, the Children of the Forest, were they called?
Yeah, I think so.
Like that sort of old magic versus, how things have modernized to the form of just, medieval war now. Obviously in the Raven Shadow, there's even, I can't remember that tribe, but the woman that he speaks to in the first one, Barel Shakur or something.
Barel Shakur, yeah, that's what they call him.
Oh, that's what they call him. Right. Yeah. I can't remember her name, but even like the magic that she has, and like, these fallen statues and like these places where like you go and they're ruins, but he touches it and it's like this futuristic sort of, magically advanced device that's super ancient. I also, this, show you guys probably haven't heard me talk about before, called Critical Role. In campaign 2, I'll try to avoid spoilers, but there was like this age called the Age of Arcanum, where like, magic was like the height of society, and society was built on magic. And then there was like the fall of that society. And so the campaign takes place like, 800 years after the calamity type thing. So, there's people who discover like these old sources of magic and they like can reutilize them for different things. Like something called broomstone is like this ancient creation that allows you to like levitate. So like old floating cities from the age of Arcanum were levitated with it, but now they use it for like sky ships because they don't know how to use it on like a bigger scale type thing. But then there's also like this city that was using like dunamantic magic, which is like time bending magic. And they like, I'll try to avoid spoilers there, but there's some really creepy stuff that this city of like that was built on magic. They were like, using some magic that was like plane shifting type magic and like conscious binding type magic. And so like that leads into some interesting body horror type stuff when, the player characters come across it. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of the ancient magic coming back. It's one of my favorite tropes because it also gives, if you're talking like a series like you're talking about, Luca, where magic is being exploited in its current form or its new form. I love that there's like but we could still use the old magic, or even just like humans use like this perverted, like in terms of D&D, it's like, humans use, arcane magic because they like perverted the stuff the elves taught them, but the elves use like druidic magic or like divine magic, whatever the case is. So yeah.
I have two kind of different like takes on that trope. One of them is the Dragon Age trope of the ancient magic being the blight coming back every few thousand years as like a massive, just apocalyptic event where the entire world is basically just screwed unless the Grey Wardens can stop it. I think that's always fun. And the second one would be from the Cosmere, something that I also never talk about whenever I'm on the podcast. The book Elantris, the magic system is like a location-based magic system, but something broke it like a while ago. And a part of the book is about the main character trying to like fix it and bring it back to be used again. Yeah, I'm like Matt, I don't really have an issue with the trope, especially because it feels like there's enough ways that you can make it somewhat unique. I can't honestly think of any like straight up just the ancient magic is back and the world is changing type stories that I've been into lately. I think the Blight is one of my favorite versions of that trope though, for sure, where just every few thousand years people know it's going to happen, it's going to come back, you can't do anything about it, and you just have to fight and deal with the consequences of a world that you live in that you have no control over like that. Yeah, it's pretty much the only two examples I have of that trope.
I mean, there's one, like I was thinking in a Stormlight, like the Parshindi are a bit of that, like
yeah, okay, I guess
even like magic that was like lost. Like, it doesn't have to be like ancient, like thousands of years or something, but like just lost magic sort of coming back. I feel like that's like a very common trope in fantasy, and also one that's rarely done badly that I've seen. Like I can't even think of like a bad example of it just because it's so ingrained into like a fantasy world. Like if there's magic that existed before, like there's people that did magic before the modern civilization that you're following in the story. Yeah. So like I feel like there's also this trope is also used in like a ways where it's like the main character finds a more tribal people or a more people that haven't advanced the way his or her society has, and then they run into like these people and they're using either a more primitive version of their magic or a completely different sort of source of magic. Even something like the Wheel of Time has these like elements where like the Dragon Reborn is like somebody that hasn't existed in hundreds of years and now they're coming back. Like this idea of like something that used to exist is being reborn or is being brought back into the world. Even something like the Chosen One is a bit of this. Like sometimes the Chosen One is the trope that sort of leads into this other like old magic trope where the Chosen One is the one that sort of brings this new age of magic into the world, or like this new age of power. And I love it. Like I love this idea of like the ancient world influencing the new world, like how it's just all cyclical.
Yeah, I feel like most sci-fi or fantasy series will never go wrong by just adding more magic. It just gets cooler. The stakes get higher. I wouldn't be mad if most series were just like, yeah, ancient magic. Here you go. There's new shit going on now.
Yeah. I guess it's very similar, but it's more niche. It's like a sub branch off of like this trope is like the dragons have returned, which I don't hate. I actually use it in D&D campaigns all the time because, dragons are terrifying in D&D especially. So it's like, they're back. It's awful. But, it's obviously it's just like, I read Bode as a kid and I played Skyrim. The dragons are back. And I've watched, Game of Thrones. So it is that trope with it being like chaotic, because a dragon being a creature in some mythologies being like an unintelligent creature is like, oh, how do we stop these weapons of mass destruction that are just rampaging? And then also when you make them like super intelligent, it's like, okay, how do we stop these weapons of mass destruction who are plotting against our demise, So it can be bad for sure. But like to your point, Luca, like I can't off the top of my head recall where like I think it can be corny sometimes when it's not like a magic system that's coming back. It's just like, oh kid, you found the magic. The world is magic again. That kind of stuff is, I mean,
it can draw a bit of like the YA sort of feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's handled like that, but even there, it's like, if you're bad at writing something like genuine, like it doesn't really matter which trope you use, it'll turn out a bit awkward. Like it's
all these bad writers who are ruining the tropes for everyone else.
I mean, when you said that sometimes it could come off as like corny, my mind just immediately went to somehow Palpatine has returned.
Oh no!
And I was like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, and because like there's the good and the bad, and you talk about Star Wars, especially with this trope. It's like, Luke Skywalker's back at the end of episode 6, and like the Jedi are coming back, like we've revived the return of the Jedi, and then it's like, oh, Palpatine's back. It's like and it's like you're saying, like it's cyclical, but in a way that's not fun because it's only been 30 years.
We're like, guys, we've done this already. Please stop. I mean, like Halo and the Forerunners, that's another one, I guess. Kind of like an ancient technology as a magic form coming back. I mean, Mass Effect kind of does it with. Spoiler kind of for Mass Effect 2 and 3 with the Leviathan race as like the original creators of the Reapers that have been hiding around the galaxy, and there's like a side mission where you go and interact with one of them. I just wanted to throw out those 2 extra matching tropes there.
I
don't know if either of you guys have ever read or like seen Shadow of the Gods. Matt, maybe you've seen it in like a chapter. It's it's a white cover with like a giant dragon and like a small warrior right next to it. It's like a white cover with a black dragon. I saw a review for the second book in that series called The Hunger of the Gods, and it was saying like that is essentially the setup of that world is like a Norse inspired fantasy world where like the ancient gods, like these ancient gigantic creatures are like waking up and like coming back into the world. And that's like the initial setup that I heard. And that like made me think of like other stories that have this trope of like the ancient or the old coming back and influencing the world. Even like The Witcher has this, like, I guess this trope is just everywhere. Like,
I think it is now that the more we talk about it, the more it's like, oh yeah, it's like in every piece of fantasy.
It's really like oftentimes it's like the, what do you call it? Like the rising. For everything else in the story to take place, it's like someone reawakened the angry gods. And now we all gotta, but yeah, I love it for that reason. I also love it when it's like a singular person.
Oh yeah,
like we are reawakened, not Palpatine, but like, this ancient evil guy, or like, because this is where like I feel like the concept in general, it's hard to go wrong with like the magic system coming back from being forgotten. That's tougher to get that wrong, I feel like. But when you branch off into like, it's the dragons or it's one dude, then it can get bad. Star Wars, X-Men Apocalypse. It's like, that's when it can get into like, happenstance. Maybe that's the difference, is like when there's a good explanation for why it's coming back. Or even if because I feel like a lot of the ones I enjoy, like, we don't know, it just came back. And then by the end of the story, you figure out like what led to it. But I like, we never find out why Palpatine came back. It's sort of just
really,
he might have made clones of himself, Like, there's no fucking answer. So like they allude to things and then they change their mind and allude to other things. It's all these like red herrings, you know. So
Always comes back to the rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Every time you're on this show, it's like, hey, you guys ever think about how Star Wars kind of sucks?
I don't even like to do it on purpose. It's just the way it goes.
I think if it's something that for you and I especially is so intrinsically tied to our love of fantasy and sci-fi, it's tough not to be reminded of where the ball was dropped.
It's just like that line so specifically, just even Oscar Isaac's delivery of it is just so like offhanded, and you're like,
man, the best is Dawn Monahan just being like weird Sith magic. Yeah. And you're like, what? That's the explanation?
Man. Wow.
Weird experiments, man. These guys are crazy.
Just a bunch of conspiracy theorists in Star Wars now.
These Sith guys are real crazy. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other, you know, or Dune is a pretty good example of like the maybe not the reawakening of, but like the awakening of a consciousness. Yeah. It's interesting because like I think it's one of those tropes that you can build your entire world on, of like, okay, society develops magic skill ends up destroying society, magic skill lies dormant until X happens. How does that affect the world? Or like our society is changing because we've discovered this long abandoned magic, but when does the line get pushed too far that we end up like that civilization who left behind this magic type of thing?
I mean, speaking of that setup, the Mark Lawrence's 2 trilogies, The Red Queen's War and The Broken Empire, like that is literally that idea where like humanity destroyed itself with magic, and now humans have come back and awakened magic again, and nothing good can come out of it. Like that is literally the setup. It's phenomenal.
I guess Zelda, like Breath of the Wild, is very much like this too. Like we discovered this ancient technology that's essentially like magic because we don't really know how it works, and then it gets like, you know, corrupted.
It's just genuinely everything has that trope in it.
Horizon, Zero Dawn.
Horizon is the exact same thing. Horizon has it on levels because it's like it's person times 3, and then it's like system times 1. Yeah. Anyway.
So yeah, a great trope, it turns out.
Yeah. No problems here.
Just in like tons of different media that we love. We're like, oh wow.
I wonder what, sorry to keep this one going, but I wonder what fantasy and sci-fi would be without this trope.
Yeah, actually, that would be,
because I feel like a lot of it's very, like, as we're sort of peeling the layers of this onion bag, very dependent on this trope. Yeah.
This trope just if your world has history before the start of your story, this trope exists in your world, essentially. Like,
exactly.
Pretty much, yeah.
At least some like derivation or variation of it will exist.
Yeah.
So if you do good world building, you have this trope, essentially.
Hey, you have this built in, and you're ready to use it at any time. Something unexplainable in the history of your world, magic.
Yeah.
For any potential dungeon masters out there, take this trope and put it everywhere you can.
It is your best friend.
Yeah. Explain away the bad writing.
Yeah.
All right.
No, that's a feature, my friend.
Yeah. So what do you got for us today, Matt?
I just wanted to talk about that, casual little CD Projekt Red new Witcher teaser that they just put out the other day.
Yes.
I was doing a little bit of reading today, and it turns out they confirmed that it's a new school of The Witcher named the Lynx.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that to me just says right off the bat that it's not going to be involving Geralt at all, I would assume. Probably also not Ciri then, I would imagine, though I could see Ciri building her own school of the Lynx. That would kind of fit her style. But yeah, I mean, I'm just super excited. I'm amazed that even with CD Projekt, or not CD, Cyberpunk in the state that it's kind of still in, that they've already announced that they're just like, we're doing another Witcher game.
Mhm.
Oh, honestly, that's not surprising to me at all. They are
Really?
trying to palette cleanses. They're like,
I
somebody
guess.
fucking Photoshop a goddamn necklace.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah, like they're using the Unreal engine, the Unreal 5 engine
Mhm.
for it, and not using their own game engine anymore, which I totally understand. They went like, okay, we have this Witcher engine, and we're gonna try and like that we made in house, and we're gonna try and use it for Cyberpunk, and trying to like change all the game mechanics over to Cyberpunk. They were like, this is awful. Like everyone that we try and hire and bring in has like no previous work on this kind of an engine.
Mhm.
So them going to Unreal Engine 5, they can just,
Yeah.
any community creator that does really good work that messes around with it in their spare time, boom, bunch of expertise, and they just bring them right on board. So I'm really excited. Like this game could be crazy cool in an Unreal Engine. I mean, that stuff looks so good every time I see any demo thing for it. So I was just curious what you guys think. I guess Matt, you said you haven't played much, but like Luca, clearly you're quite into the Witcher series.
I mean, The Witcher 3, I would say, is maybe the best game in the PS4 generation. Like,
Yeah.
And it came out with the console. So
Yeah.
like it was like unsurpassed for like a good 8 years. Like I can't think of the only game I can think of that's like at that level is like God of War. That was like as big for me in this generation of games.
From the little I've played of The Witcher, but understanding how big the universe, like the world is, I'd say they're equally impressive for completely different reasons.
Yeah,
like
fair.
The thing about The Witcher, like it's not even the world, the game itself, like how the game plays, how the missions were written, like how much effort was put into the game as like an actual video game was just insane. I mean, like Blood and Wine.
I was gonna say, man, the DLC to that game
Yeah.
is its own set of games.
It's literally it's a brand new map. Like it adds like 30 hours of main story missions. It adds like 10, 15 hours of side quests, and it costs less than like it could be a full price game.
Absolutely.
And it was a DLC.
There's plenty of games that come out at a full $80 that don't have half the content that Blood and Wine did. Like it's ridiculous. If they can match that kind of quality and output for a full new game with new set of characters, I have 100% faith that they'll do a good job with it, even with like removed from the Cyberpunk blunder that they have.
Yeah. Like I know after The Witcher 3 came out, like after I finished, I started looking for like any rumors of The Witcher 4 or anything. And I know that somebody in CD Projekt had said like, we don't know if we'll continue Geralt's story, but we do want more Witcher stories. And this one was called like, they announced like The Witcher Saga, right? It wasn't like
a new saga begins.
So it was like, it seems like they want to set up maybe like either a series of games or like, I mean, they also dabbled a bit. They were talking about like multiplayer stuff with the Cyberpunk, and they might try to do something like that with The Witcher. I really hope they don't, because I don't want that. Like, I want a solo RPG experience.
Yeah. Like the story is still one of the really great parts about the Witcher series. So I think adding a co-op setting would often dilute that experience for at least one of the parties, if not both.
Yeah.
So I would agree. I think, unless like the narrative was written in mind with having a second character there, but then that would be, I can't even imagine the headache that would.
I don't want to see that. Like, they did so with The Witcher 3. Like, if they just copy that and try to elevate that for like a fourth game, that would be amazing. I'm just curious what the story would be then, like, because they'd be going out of the canon of the books.
Yeah, because the books have never written about this school of the Woodside, I imagine.
That's very, just reading up on the teaser reveal here. The Link School is something that's never shown up any mention or reference either in the games, obviously not the books. There's a fanfic about the School of the Lynx, which will probably be disregarded. But I'm curious because I know there's a lot of like when I talk to Will, there's a definite distinction between a lot of fans of The Witcher between, the written word, the games, and the show. The show being, the most far removed from the books, as to what I've heard, and the game sort of being an unofficial sequel of the books. So could you guys clarify this for me? Like, this is going to be a sequel to an unofficial sequel of the book, right? Do I have that right?
I honestly have no idea. I've not read the books, and I still haven't watched the second season of the show yet. I'm just kind of waiting to binge that entire thing when I have some time. But
Me too.
as far as I'm aware, yeah, you are right with the Witcher 1, 2, 3 kind of being like an unofficial sequel to the canon books.
Mm-hmm.
And then with this, I have no idea. I imagine it'll keep it canon to at least like the video game world of the Witcher series.
Right.
I don't really know anything outside of that because there's not much other reference to it. Like, I don't know if the school will be anywhere near where like the places that you've interacted with as Geralt in the past games. I don't know if they'll choose an entirely different chunk of the world that's just not really been explored before. Like with the Heart and Wine or the Blood and Wine DLC, like it was very clearly there was a massive chunk of the world that hasn't been used in the games yet so that they could go into. I could definitely see them taking that route with this game and just having a whole new section of the world for you to be able to explore. But Aluka might know more about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like where the canon like lines up, I actually don't know. I haven't finished the series either. I've only read like the first 3 books,
okay,
and all the short stories. Like I thought originally that like game 1 and 2 sort of happen around the like they happen within the like the timeline of the books, and then number 3 was after, but I could be completely wrong.
Okay,
so I haven't played games 1 or 2. I only started with the 3rd game,
right?
Because like game 1 was like a PC exclusive from like early 2000s or late 90s.
I tried it, and yeah, like 2 is okay in terms of mechanical refinements, and then obviously 3 is a much smoother gameplay experience. But the like 25 minutes I played of 1, it was like a mess. And
it's like you go back to play Assassin's Creed 1, but worse.
Oh yeah, worse.
Yeah, way
like the little bit of gameplay I've seen of it is just it's
just clunky. There's way too many like mechanics that you have to try and keep track of. So like half your keyboard is being used for different things. And you're like, oh my goodness, okay, I'm lost already.
But in terms of like how much of the Witcher 3 story was written by like the CD Projekt Red team, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure a lot of it was like their own creation.
Right.
I mean, obviously, like, but the thing is, like, the characters, like, they didn't have to write the characters. Like, they had Ciri, they had Geralt, they had Yen, like all the witches. They had all these characters already ready. So that's why I'm like, where would they go with the Witcher 4? I feel like you'd have to have all of the established characters there, and like have like, I don't know, Geralt be like an older man or like a retired, or like Geralt could take over the role of Vesemir in this sort of story. I feel like you'd have to have, like, I'd have to see Novigrad. I'd have to see like the Skellig Isles. Then you could add like the other geographic locations. Like you could have Tucson and like the desert that you don't explore at all. Let's say like north of the continent. And like, I would like to see that. And it's honestly, interesting, like, how would the School of the Lynx even fit into the world they've set up?
Yeah, like, I'm disappointed that the teaser has snow and not sand. And I know that the lynx is more of a like kind of northern hemisphere animal, which fine, it makes sense. I do think like a Witcher game set in a desert scenario would be really, really incredible. Like the different like twist on mutations in like natural wildlife existing in a desert scenario would be crazy. Like instead of spiders in caves, you have like crazy snakes like jumping out of holes in the sand and stuff like that would be really, really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, most of the Witcher schools have really specific kind of like traits that are defined by their like school animal. So I'm thinking that with a lynx, you've got like a really agile school that moves around a lot, and almost like it seems like it would be really similar to the wolf, but just in a smaller stature almost. Do you
think like that they would do it as like a customizable character, or would you play like a set character? Because that's like one major like, you play Geralt, you know, like you play an established character in the School of the Wolf. I don't know, I mean, you also play as Ciri in like parts of the game.
Chunks of the game.
But like I wonder what if they do like a character creator like they tried for Cyberpunk, right? Or would they write a new POV character that you play as?
Yeah, I didn't think about that at all, actually. And I guess coming from Cyberpunk, where they had experience creating that like more free RPG branching gameplay style, that would be really interesting. Because one of the things I do think that Cyberpunk did really well, even off of release, was the 3 like lifestyle choices and just the amount of customization that you had.
Mhm.
That if they could really get the transition over well, it would be amazing. Like imagine combining a Skyrim type customization system with the Witcher world and storytelling and characters. Like that would be crazy. That would be, I mean, that would be like an early game of the year contender right off the bat if it was rumored to be.
So
set up like
you would prefer like creating your own character in this universe than playing a written one?
I don't know if I would prefer it though, is the thing. I think it would still be really, really great. It's just that like part of the reason that the other Witcher games were good was because it was so well written through a single character.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have to worry about like shoehorning different lifestyles and character backgrounds into a single player character campaign. It was, this is Geralt. Your Geralt is the same as your friend's Geralt. It's just you wore different armor and had a different like optimization path. It was still, you know, his backstory is the same backstory, maybe slightly tweaked depending on how you made choices in the past games when you played it. But that always feels like an easier writing decision to make than trying to like have customized backgrounds. And just the depth of character as well is always better if you have a pre-existing written out character that you just step into the shoes of and then see life through their eyes rather than creating your own. I'd be really curious to see what it would be like. And I think maybe if I finished Cyberpunk, I would have a better answer, because if I could see how they handled that customization through a full campaign, maybe I'd change my mind overall. But I haven't finished it yet. So, but yeah, that's a good point, Luca. I didn't think about even a customizing character at all.
Yeah, because like one of the strongest points of The Witcher 3 is like the writing and like the
like
actual
Geralt's
story.
relationship with Ciri the entire time is basically like a father-daughter duo. Like that was never something that Geralt thought he would have in his life, and then he has this character that he has to like protect and care for and grows to be very fond of. It's hard to do that with X, you know, character number 23 that someone has made. Like obviously you can still write the narrative to do it, and other games have shown us that, but it just makes it a lot more difficult and it feels cheaper sometimes. But
it's sort of turning The Witcher into Skyrim, not the same. But that being said, though, like I never, like, the only times I've felt connected with my Skyrim character is when I put like heavy role play restrictions on my playthrough, which is not often.
No.
And I don't think that's the case for most people who play games like that. But I have felt very connected with my character playing something like Dragon Age, where like your character choices are actually like built into the game. But that is a customizable character. But you only have a few options of like backstory and stuff like that. So it's doable to make it grounded, sort of deep character. But I think it would definitely be a step away from what they've been known by, I guess. So I think just as like a total outsider, whatever they did with Cyberpunk, they're like, maybe that's not our thing.
I mean, I would honestly rather see a written character, I think, for The Witcher. Because like when you're talking about something like Dragon Age or Skyrim, it's like they write everything for the Dragonborn, and then you just make the Dragonborn you want. Like they write everything for the Inquisitor, and then you just make the Inquisitor whoever you want them to be. So like I feel like it adds a depth to the writing when they're like writing for a specific, writing for Geralt is one thing, writing for the unknown Inquisitor is a different sort of feeling. Although like there is like moments of Dragon Age where I'm like deeply invested in the story and like I'm drawn into my character because I created the character. But like Geralt is like a special character, maybe just because I love Geralt so much that I'll go back and play as Geralt endlessly. So like it might be difficult to write another character like that that's so iconic and loved that everybody would just be in for that. But I think I'd still rather see them write an original character. But I know that they did mention in that same like interview that I was reading, when they said they wanted to do more Witcher games, that they might want to have like a younger and female Witcher as like the main character, and that could be like mentored by Ciri or like mentored by Geralt and Ciri. Like I'd love to see that.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, I think it is just the fact that like it's a step away. Like when you think of The Witcher, you think of Geralt. Like that's, sure there are other Witchers involved in the story in every single game you play through, but Geralt is the Witcher. Like his face is on every game that they put out. So I think, again, it could be managed. Like a game like Dragon Age 2, which gets some, pretty fair criticisms about it. Like the concept of having your character's sister being a major part of the story going forward, that kind of thing is an easy way to make an instant connection no matter which RPG character you play.
Right.
So like there are ways to try and tie those characters in, but again, I think like Lucas says, like, the formula wasn't broken having a really well written and liked character that everyone just played as. You have experience doing stuff like that. My only concern would be the fact that you don't have anything to base it off of. You have to write it from the ground up at this point.
Yeah. Because, with making Geralt in the games, they have the novels to pull from and be like, this is what makes this character tick.
Exactly.
And, that sort of comes through and while you're playing the game. So like, it is a little bit scary of them being like, yeah, we could do this. It's
like we could write another Geralt. Like, okay.
Like if they announce tomorrow that like the author of the books is helping to write the game, then I'm like, all right, whatever choice you make at this point, I'm down. Like we're okay here. We're going to be fine.
I think he's very much uninvolved from most of the games, right? There's some sort of...
he was completely uninvolved with the games.
Yeah. And I think I reading here, like there's a quote that says, we're never going to make a Witcher 4. That's not happening. This is a new thing. And it doesn't violate our agreement with the author. So that to me says we could do this and there's nothing that person could do about it, which says to me that they probably would if they could. So I don't know if they would be involved.
Yeah, it's like the Mass Effect and the Halo thing where like the parent company is like, we're done here. And then somebody puts some pressure on it. They're like, but money. And they're like, oh, we're making more.
Right. We forgot.
Yeah. And so
actually the story wasn't over yet.
Yeah.
Palpatine has returned.
Oh, not again. As long as they don't go that route and have, I don't know, something at least to show for a main character by the time a trailer releases, that would put a lot of my concerns to bed, but we'll have to wait and see. Again, it's just a teaser, so
this is a poster.
Right. But I mean the hype level is off the charts.
Oh yeah, I mean I haven't even played Cyberpunk, so I am not upset with CD Projekt Red at all. Like to me they are still the company that made The Witcher, so I have utmost faith.
The Witcher 3 didn't exactly release in perfect state either. And
I didn't even buy it at release. Like I only found out about that later. So like apparently it came out buggy and terrible, and they worked on it for like they released like multiple patches for it, and then it turned into like Game of the Year.
And like Cyberpunk is fairly playable now. It's not always perfect, but it's very playable at least. So
I even heard that it was good from the start on like PS5.
Yeah, I mean that was the only issues that like PS5, like there were 12 people in the world that had a PS5 at that time, so it's like unfortunate. But if there was a studio that I could trust to even not release something that was great on release and then genuinely fix it into being something fantastic, CD Projekt Red is right up there. So as long as they stick true to the kind of stuff that they were good at in the first place, I'll probably still really enjoy this game.
Okay, I got one question for you guys. If the trailer comes out, let's just say a week for the conversation's sake, what would be the one thing that you would be like, I'm not fucking playing this game? If they made the character this person or like this, like what would be the one thing where you're like, oh hell nah?
I think if it was something that would like shit on Geralt's legacy, that would be an instant like, okay, what the fuck, you guys? Yeah. Like you just had 3 games where everyone loved this character, and then like, I don't know, say
like he's the villain of the 4th game.
Like maybe he just like decided randomly to treat Ciri like trash out of nowhere and like fracture their relationship in a really, really bad way. It'd be like, well, what was the point of like The Witcher 3 then, you guys? Like, what? Okay. I think something like that would be pretty bad. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't think of like a character that'd be like, oh, I don't want to play that character. Like I don't want to be that
person. But if you're just Dandelion.
Hey, count me in. It's just a bard game. You just run around playing songs the whole time.
It's like a Guitar Hero type, like.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Like a lute with like 4 colored buttons.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I agree. Any game that disrespects the legacy of the story or the first few games, I would not be down for.
Yeah,
I mean, still probably buy it just because it's like another Witcher game, but I would not be happy playing for it.
Yeah, the amount of content you'd probably still get out of it would be really fun, but I mean, like, even if Geralt was dead, I'd probably still be fine.
Mhm.
If it was that far advanced that Geralt had passed and Ciri was like the older mentor keeping the place running,
I'd be
that
completely
would be a really
fine with
cool
it.
concept. Like,
Mhm.
obviously, Geralt had his time in games and books and now TV shows, so
Mhm.
I don't blame them for trying to go towards a new character in that scenario.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
just
even doing it like that would be like a safe way to like preserve his legacy
Exactly,
as a
right?
character.
Yeah.
like he's so far removed that there's no way that he can like be involved in a
Mhm.
serious way anymore. And it's like, cool, all right. If you want to deal with more Geralt stuff, just go back and play the other games. And
Yeah.
have a great time.
Yeah, if he's just like an overarching character that like existed and is essentially like a mythological sort of person now, like I'd be completely fine. Like,
Yeah, like some legend, like genuinely a legendary Witcher that
Mhm.
like people tell stories about would be really cool. But
yeah.
yeah, just leave him alone. As far as I'm aware for the next game, just leave him alone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. I guess that'll do it for us here. Matt, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah,
Man.
thanks for having me back.
Yeah, people, you can catch the show every Tuesday. And I promise soon we're going to do the Dune rumination.
Yes.
We're very close.
I'm done exams soon, so
Okay.
I'll be tearing through it.
I thought you were about to say you're done. I was like, fuck. And now it's me.
Nope.
Now I'm the guy. But yeah, that'll come soon. And yeah, I guess that's it. I'm Matt.
I'm Luca.
And I'm Matt.
And we are the Lords of Lore.